In the winter of 1879, a tall, muscular Cree man named Swift Runner emerged alone from the frozen wilderness of northern Alberta. 25 miles behind him, at a desolate winter camp far from the nearest Hudson's Bay Company post, investigators found the skeletal remains of 9 people. His wife, his mother, his brother, 6 children. Their bones were scattered across the snow like the remnants of a feast. When authorities questioned Swift Runner, the explanation he gave chilled them more than the sub-zero air ever could. He said he had become something else, something wearing his skin, but no longer possessing his soul. He said he had become a Wendigo. This is not a story about a creature lurking in the woods. This is a story about what hunger, isolation, and desperation can do to a human mind, and how entire cultures build myths to explain the unexplainable. For centuries before Europeans arrived in North America, the Algonquin-speaking peoples of the northern forests told of the Wendigo, a malevolent spirit of insatiable greed and cannibalistic hunger. Some described it as a towering giant, 15 feet tall, with ash-gray skin stretched tight over a skeletal frame. Others spoke of glowing eyes sunk deep into a skull, yellowed fangs, and breath that smelled of decay. The worst accounts said the creature grew larger with every person it consumed, yet was never satisfied. The more it ate, the hungrier it became. But the Wendigo myth wasn't simply a monster tale. It was a warning, a cultural code, a reminder that in the brutal winters of the Canadian subarctic, survival depended on cooperation and shared resources. Greed didn't just threaten one person, it threatened the entire community. The Wendigo symbolized the ultimate betrayal, a human who consumed their own people. In that sense, it wasn't only a creature, it was a mirror. The earliest written account of the Wendigo comes from 1636, when French Jesuit missionary Paul de Jean recorded the warning of an Algonquin woman describing a creature called Atchchin that had devoured nearby tribes. But long before Europeans' pens touched paper, the legend existed across Cree, Ojibwe, Algonquin, Innu, and other Algonquin cultures. Though each version varied, the core belief remained the same. A Wendigo was created when someone resorted to cannibalism to survive, or when greed hollowed them out so completely that their humanity vanished. The transformation was spiritual and physical. A person's heart would turn to ice. Their lips would disappear from constant gnawing hunger. Their body would grow gaunt no matter how much they ate. They gained a natural strength, speed, and the ability to navigate their territory with impossible precision. And almost every transformation began in winter. Imagine the boreal wilderness of northern Ontario or Manitoba in the dead of winter. Towering spruce, heavy snow that swallows your legs, temperatures dropping to -40 degrees. No towns, no roads, no help for hundreds of miles. Silence so deep it presses on your ears. This is the kind of environment where minds begin to break. Swift Runner's story became the most infamous case of what anthropologists later termed Wendigo psychosis. In the winter of 1878-79, he took his family into the wilderness to hunt and trap. Food was scarce, game migrations had shifted, small animals were difficult to find. Swift Runner later claimed he began to dream of a spirit urging him to consume the people around him. Over time, he said, the spirit took control until he was no longer Swift Runner. He was Wendigo. Trial documents describe what happened next. Swift Runner killed his wife. He forced one surviving son to butcher his younger brother. He killed his infant by hanging the baby from a lodgepole. He killed his mother-in-law. He killed his brother. By the time authorities followed him back to the camp in spring, the bones were scattered across the site like refuse. And Swift Runner, who stood only 25 miles from an outpost with emergency food, was well fed. At his trial in August 1879, he insisted the Wendigo had possessed him. The Cree members of the jury understood the cultural context. but they still found him guilty after 20 minutes of deliberation. His execution was delayed because the hangman forgot the straps, and the waiting crowd had burned part of the gallows for kindling. Swift Runner passed the time chatting with guards, eating pemmican, and joking. Just before his hanging on December 20th, 1879, he addressed the crowd and said, "I am no longer a man." Swift Runner's case was horrifying, but it wasn't unique. Throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries, there were numerous documented Wendigo cases. Some resembled Swift Runners. Others involved community-sanctioned killings of people believed to be on the verge of transforming. This leads us to another figure central to the legend: the Wendigo hunter. Jack Fiddler, Zawana Jijigogabao, he who stands in the southern sky, was an Ojibwe chief and shaman born in the mid-1800s in one of the most remote regions of North America. Like his father before him, he was known for healing the sick, breaking curses, and above all, defeating Wendigos. Fiddler claimed to have killed 14 Wendigos over his lifetime. Some were supernatural threats sent by rival shamans. Others were members of his own community who showed early symptoms of transformation: loss of appetite, vomiting, a dread of becoming a cannibal, and an uncontrollable compulsion toward human flesh. Families would ask Fiddler to end their loved one's life before the transformation completed, an act viewed not as murder, but mercy. His own brother died this way. The rituals were specific: strangulation, burial, fire over the grave, and in some accounts, pulling the body through stakes to ensure the spirit could not return. These acts weren't cruelty, they were protection. One story tells of a red cloud, a known omen, forming over Seddon Neville Lake. Fiddler took an axe and walked into the woods alone. He returned wounded, but silent. The cloud disappeared. The people understood what that meant. But in the early 1900s, Canadian authorities began replacing traditional laws with colonial ones. In 1907, police arrested Jack and his brother Joseph for the death of a woman they believed was transforming into a Wendigo. The cultural logic behind the act meant nothing to the government. Jack was in his late 70s or early 80s when he was transported to Norway House. On September 30th, he calmly walked away during an escorted break, tied a sash to a tree, and ended his life, rather than face a court that would never understand him. Joseph was convicted, later pardoned, but he died in prison in 1909 before the pardon arrived. With the Fiddler brothers gone, traditional Wendigo hunting died with them. So what was the Wendigo, really? A supernatural being? A cultural warning? A psychological response to starvation? In the early 1900s, Western psychiatrists labeled cases Wendigo psychosis, a culture-bound syndrome triggered by isolation, starvation, and fear. Documented cases appeared almost exclusively among Algonquin peoples in the subarctic, and almost always during winter. But by the 1980s, scholars fiercely debated whether Wendigo psychosis had ever existed at all, or whether early anthropologists had misunderstood cultural metaphors as literal events. Today, the Wendigo sits in a space between anthropology, psychology, and legend, a symbol of what extreme conditions can draw out of the human mind. And in the frozen forests of the north, the stories still remain.